Hi, my name is Zoe Hayes-Handy, and I'm from the University of San Diego. Today I will be presenting my study on the selective attention bias using the invisible gorilla. In this presentation, we will be going over what the selective attention bias is, what previous research has been done on this topic, who participated in our study, what tests we used, where and when our study took place, and why we are interested in this topic. We will also be presenting our findings and our data along with our final conclusion based off of our research. So, what is the selective attention bias? The selective attention bias refers to the tendency of people to be so primarily focused on one task that they are essentially blinded to the occurrence of a second event or object. This term, selective attention bias, is also used interchangeably with inattentional blindness in many other studies. It is interesting to researchers that people can literally watch a second event occur simultaneously and yet it doesn't register in their brain as having occurred at all because they're so focused on the primary task. It also makes many researchers question how many events and objects in daily life people constantly miss due to separate distractions. Like I said earlier, many previous studies have been done on this topic. For example, one was done with radiologists where they were asked to perform a familiar lung nodule detection test, where in the last slide a gorilla was inserted that was more than 10 times the size of a regular nodule, yet over 83% of the radiologists did not report noticing the gorilla. The importance of this study specifically was that the task was a familiar test, which is very differentiable from many of the other inattentional blindness studies that have been done where participants have been asked to perform a task that is unfamiliar to them. A second study that was done was where researchers manipulated exercise variables within a study, and they found that low to moderate exercise actually decreased selective attention blindness, meaning that people were more prone to pay attention and notice the second object occurring with moderate exercise, whereas in moderate to high exercise, the selective attention blindness actually increased, meaning that people were less likely to notice that second event occurring. A third and final study that researchers performed, they actually used the same video and test that we are using for this specific study, which will be discussed later, but they related their results to working memory capacity and found that people with higher working memory capacity were more likely to notice the foreign object or second event that was occurring, such as in this example is the gorilla. So in this study we used a video, and the purpose was to observe the selective attention bias by having people watch a common inattentional blindness video where they were asked to count the number of times a basketball was passed. Their results were recorded, and then researchers asked how many people observed the unexpected invisible gorilla that walked into the scene. Our hypothesis, based off of previous research, was that the majority of participants would be so focused on the primary task of counting basketball passes that they'd be essentially blinded to the large gorilla that enters the video. As you can see, this is a snapshot from the video that we used. This is what participants were originally watching of the basketball being passed between the 6 people. Our participants were college students at a small liberal arts private school in Southern California. They were all from the same introductory psychology course. There's 21 participants in total, 19 girls, and 2 boys. The age range was 18 to 21 years old with an average age of 18 years old. Grade levels varied with 16 freshmen, 3 sophomores, and 2 juniors. Majors also varied with 6 behavioral neuroscience majors, 5 psychology majors, and 10 undeclared students. There was 2 main materials used. Our video was the first material. It was titled The Selective Attention Test, designed by Daniel Simmons and Christopher Shabrice. The video begins by introducing students to, or instructing them to count how many passes the players wearing specifically the white shirts make between one another. 20 seconds into the video, a man dressed in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the players passing the ball, pounds his chest, and then walks off. Later, the video asks the participants to record how many passes they counted, and then gives the participants the correct number of passes, and then asks them if they saw the gorilla walk through the scene, and then rewinds it, goes back to the gorilla for those who hadn't seen it the first time. So that's the video in sum, and then the other material that was present was just a piece of paper and pen for participants to record the number of passes that they counted. Our procedure, all participants were given the same identical instructions, which was they were asked to watch a short video, to pay close attention at the very beginning because they would be asked to count something, and then when they had their value they would record it on a blank piece of paper. So we played the video, then the video was paused when it asked the participants to record the number of passes that they counted. Then the papers were collected, and then the video was played again, the correct number of passes was displayed, and then the video asked who had and who had not seen the gorilla. The video was then paused again. Participants raised their hand for who had seen the gorilla and then who had not seen the gorilla. Those results were tallied, and then the video was resumed so that people who hadn't seen it could see the gorilla again. These results show the measures of central tendency, meaning the mean, median, mode, and standard deviation, specifically relating to the number of passes that participants recorded. The correct number was 15, and based off of our data, it shows that the majority of participants did count the correct number of passes, which goes along with our hypothesis of people paying attention to the primary task of counting passes. As you can see, our median and mode were exactly 15, and our mean was 15.27 with a very low standard deviation value of only 2.43. Our second set of results displayed who had and who had not seen the gorilla, again supporting our hypothesis by showing that the majority of people reported having not seen the gorilla. So in sum, our experiment found two major points. The first being that the majority of participants did not record having seen the gorilla, and that the number of passes recorded was fairly accurate. Therefore, our results did in fact support our hypothesis. Our results also supported the previous literature that was discussed earlier, specifically the study number 3, which related to the exact study that we did. It would be interesting as a follow-up study to test out of our participants who got the correct number of passes to test their working memory capacity and see if it coincided with the results that study number 3 found, that those with higher working memory capacity did in fact notice the gorilla more and also had higher accuracy in counting passes. It would also be interesting to replicate our study with different subgroups, such as children, professional basketball players, relating to study number 1, where the participants would be familiar with the primary task at hand. Also to see men versus women, if gender affects selective attention bias at all, and also elderly people to see if age has an effect on selective attention bias. There were a couple strengths and weaknesses to the study. One of the main strengths was that the participants had no prior knowledge of what was being studied in this topic. Also, all participants watched the exact same video in the same environment and were given identical instructions. The participants were also very similar in age, producing a pretty accurate conclusion for this specific sub-age group of young adults. Some of the weaknesses, though, were that a good majority of the participants had already seen this exact video before and therefore knew what to expect. Because of this, those participants who had already seen the video were asked the first time that they had originally seen it who had and who had not seen the video, therefore allowing researchers to correctly find a majority that wasn't skewed. The study also did not yield any groundbreaking or new evidence about the selective attention bias, merely just reiterated that it did exist. And the study could have been better controlled, and because of the small number of participants in this study, results are not extremely affirmative, unfortunately, yet still important in selective attention bias study. So, overall, the study tested the existence of the selective attention bias by assigning participants a specific task and noting if they did or did not observe the unexpected object present. The results affirmed the effects of the selective attention bias by displaying that the majority of participants did not notice the gorilla, aka the unexpected object or event occurring, because they were too focused on accurately performing the primary task, which was counting the basketballs. This book is by Christopher Chabris and Daniel Simmons, the people who had originally made the Invisible Gorilla video, just kind of detailing their main results of their findings from the study originally. And lastly, my references from the prior 3 studies. Thank you.